Hello everyone. Good morning or good evening depending on where you are. Welcome to this webinar on digital design for manufacturing, a critical element for digital transformation. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. All the attendees are in listen only mode. If you have any questions during the session, please type them into the Q&A box and I'll take them at the end. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Hemant Koshti. I lead the product marketing function at HCL's Industry Software Division. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. We have three speakers sharing their experiences with us in this webinar today. We have Tom Gill. Tom is a senior consultant and PLM practice manager at SIM Data Corporation. He has over 25 years of experience applying computer-based solutions to engineering and manufacturing functions. Before joining SIM Data in 2010, he worked as an independent PLM consultant after spending more than 20 years at manufacturing companies. Thank you, Tom, for being with us today. We also have Prashant Ruperi. Prashant is a senior engineering manager at Whirlpool Incorporation and based out of Michigan, United States. He has been in the industry for 20 years working in product engineering and development functions. His primary focus is on product development for all global refrigeration products for Whirlpool brands. Currently, Prashant is managing a team of about 120 plus engineers and designers across geographies. Prashant also holds 4 patents on his name. Thank you, Prashant, for taking the time to share your experience with us today. We also have Rahul Rajadhyaksha. Rahul is a product director of DFMPro at HCL Industry Software Division. Rahul has nearly 20 years of software product development experience and has been associated with HCL DFMPro product for over 10 plus years. Being passionate about interacting with customers to understand their needs, Rahul blends the technology insights and customer requirement to deliver value from DFX platform. Thank you for joining the session, Rahul. With that introductions, let's get started. And I would like to invite Tom to share the analyst perspective of design for manufacturing as a function and why it is critical for digital transformation. Over to you, Tom.
All right, thanks, Hemant. So, and next slide, please. So I've happy to be here to talk, and at SimData, we're a strategic management consulting firm focused on PLM. I'm sure many of you have heard of us. And next slide. And let's get into the meat of the presentation. So we use this slide a lot in our presentations because it captures the state of the business environment very well. Everyone's facing pressures: globalization, product complexity, pricing pressures, competition. The amount of each of these vary company to company, but for the most part, everyone faces these pressures. And what it forces companies to do is develop better products, higher product quality, in shorter amount of time and deliver them to the market at lower costs so they can make their forecasted margins. And what we found time and time again is the way to meet these challenges sustainably is with product and process innovation. So one click, please. So if you look at these drivers, they're really what the executives in your company care about and ultimately what needs to be addressed. So a tip to the attendees is if you focus on those drivers in any of your proposals to make changes within your company, then you're liable to align well and get support from your executives. So now the subject of my talk is really digital transformation and how does DFM or DFX impact digital transformation. So at SimData, we get involved in a lot of digital transformation projects. When we go into an industrial company, the typical state that you see is like similar to the diagram you see on the left there, where people have been adding technology to try and solve problems for decades now. And it's often just a spaghetti mess of things with a mix of automated and manual processes. And what we try to do is develop a strategy to transform the complex mess that you see into something more structured and predictable, so it generates a better product and better return on your product or your company's investments. So these are not trivial projects, even in small and medium businesses trying to change the data across your product lifecycle, from your upfront requirements through your design, your manufacturing, and into service out in the field, requires a big effort to get it all coordinated and working together. Next slide. So one of the tools that can be used to help implement a digital transformation is Design for Excellence. And it's really a methodology for managing complexity. Design for Excellence came out of originally, the original tools and products were known as Design for Manufacturing. They focused on developing checklists to ensure that products could be manufactured properly, and over time expanded into cover other areas. If you look at the circle on the right, you can see the different areas that Design for Excellence encompasses beyond just manufacturing. You can design for assembly, design for the environment or sustainability issues, design for costing. A lot of the emphasis on the excellence depends on the type of business that you're in. Every business has a unique set of drivers. And what the DFX, so over time, what DFX has evolved into is, started out as we started using CAD software, programmers developed custom code to evaluate designs. I actually wrote some of those kinds of code applications many years ago. And as the rules became better understood, software companies started commercializing and standardizing and commercializing the tools. As solid modeling became more prevalent, the tools were able to get much more rich in the kinds of assessments that they can do. So the cool thing is, as you start to do things with software, you're able to automate them and make them more repeatable. And doing that automation can be a key part of digital transformation. So within DFX, many of you have seen this, at least a version of this chart. And what it basically says is, in the upfront processes, you're not spending a lot of money against the total product cost over its life cycle, but the decisions that you're making early in the process have a huge impact on the total cost. So the premise is that if you do more upfront when the costs are low, you can have a better control of your total life cycle cost and ultimately be more profitable. So what DFX does, or by implementing it in software, it gives you a tool to evaluate your designs without having to create physical prototypes. You evaluate them up front in software. When the costs are low, you make more and better decisions so that you, when you actually physically instantiate your product, it comes out better and at lower cost. Next slide. So now if you think in terms of impacting that cost, I mentioned the CAD software and 3D solid modeling being a huge enabler. There's a huge amount of information that's captured in a 3D CAD application. And even to this day, and I spent most of my career in this space, executives don't really understand the data that exists within 3D CAD systems and the associated applications. CAD is thought of as a way to create drawings, which is not accurate. What you have in a modern CAD tool, you've got an accurate 3D shape. You've got the size of the part or the assembly, including all the feature sizes, the holes, the slots. You've got weight, you've got the assembly relationships, you know how things go together. You've got configurations, and for non-geometric properties, you've got attributes that product designers will typically assign. With DFX, you're able to consume that data and make decisions. Beyond just the 3D shape, over the last 20 years or so, a new technology got developed, PMI, or product manufacturing information. What that technology has done is it takes the data that used to be put on a 2D drawing and embeds it directly into the 3D model. If you look at the image over on the right, you can get a sense of what that looks like. And so what you have there is either the dimension or the GD&T information or the note is associated directly with a feature on the model, and it's accessible via software. So the data, both the shape and the PMI information, is stored in the CAD file, and with DFX, modern DFX technology, you're able to access that data within a software program and give feedback and make decisions. So you've got a huge data set here that helps you make important decisions in the life cycle. So next, click please. So how can this impact your business? Your manufacturing processes can be more automated. You're able to, when an engineer releases a design, you're able to make manufacturing processing decisions without physically having to look at the part. You can get at least some upfront suggestions on manufacturing process, what types of tools you need based on the tolerances and so on. You also can extract other information that you saw in the DFX circle. How serviceable is the product? Are you going to be able to remove parts and replace them? You're able to assess cost, which is a big part of the design, and sustainability. Things like, are we using conflict minerals? So now you've got a high level viewpoint of the data that's there. And the next question is, how does DFX, which can be seen as a useful tool, how does it enable digital transformation? What you're doing is you're encoding business rules as knowledge into a process. You use CAD software to extract the data, and then the rules are another data set that you want to validate the CAD model with, and the algorithms within the DFX software combine those to give recommendations. The exciting part for digital transformation is the automated validation portion of the process. So there's three main areas where this impacts. Interactively, as a designer or engineer is creating a product, he can run these DFX checkers and get feedback on his design in real time. He doesn't have to send it off to someone else to take a look. He can get feedback, and then the other thing is the same rules get checked over and over again as part of a process. If you're doing something manually, oftentimes a step will get forgotten. Software doesn't forget those steps. The next place you're able to automate is when you incorporate DFX into your workflows, into your higher level business processes. You can run these DFX checks at milestones, like prototype release, pre-prototype, prototype, and production release are common places to do that, and it gives you a check on your data at those critical points in time to make sure that nothing was missed. And then the third area is if you have a rule change, perhaps a new conflict mineral got defined, or you added some new equipment in your factory and you can now execute 5-axis machining, so you can machine a different class of part in your factory. You're able to run DFX against your release database and assess impacts of rule change, either the negative impacts or the positive impacts, to identify the opportunities. Next slide. So all these things help companies impact cost, quality, and speed to market. So next slide. So when you're executing digital transformation, and SimData has been doing these from our inception, almost 40 years now, we've captured a lot of data for what are the benefits of digital transformation. And you can see the list here. A lot of the range depends on the industry and the maturity of the company. But when you move from eliminate manual processes or breaks in the digital thread, you can get these huge reductions, even in relatively mature companies. So another click. And so the interesting thing is, while these are overall digital transformation reductions, DFX is a critical enabler and can impact every one of these processes. And the big thing to remember is when you eliminate that human interaction, you get step change functions in the amount of time that it takes you to do things, or step change reductions in the time. So what should you take away from this presentation? I think you're all very aware business pressures are relentless, and you've got to do things differently to move ahead. Executives are very aware of this, and we're seeing a huge uptick in the number of people with companies that have digital transformation programs that they're either kicking off or that they're reinvigorating to take better advantage of the technology investments that they've made. Certainly, it's well understood that anything you can do up front when the costs are low before you get to production can have a dramatic impact, or dramatic positive impact, and you should be striving to pull as many decisions forward as you can when the costs are low before you physically instantiated things. And DFX is a key enabling tool to make that happen. It really is a game changer, and one of the aspects we see is it has an analogy with software development. Software development has automated testing to ensure you don't have software regressions, and DFX gives you that capability within the mechanical or the physical design world, that you can test your product against a wide variety of design rules. And so that's my last slide. And what I'd like to do is turn it over next to Prashant Rupari from Whirlpool, and he's going to give you the real world view of how these tools are used. Over to you, Prashant.
Thanks, Tom. Again, a very insightful, I would say, information. Thank you. So today I'm going to discuss briefly about Whirlpool and a little bit of a use case of a real life, how and what we are seeing in our industry and what trends and what actions we are taking, just as a kind of a tire hits the road scenario. So again, about Whirlpool, we are in the business for more than 110 years and all about making or improving life at the home. Next slide, please. And again, our vision is basically the best kitchen and laundry company and the pursuit of, again, coming back, improving life at home. Next slide, please. Now, these are some facts about Whirlpool. If you guys are not aware of, pretty much in all the region, we have our brand. If it's not Whirlpool, there's one of our brand. We own more than 15 plus brands. So probably in North America, especially, or Europe, if you go in any store, you will find at least 3 of our brand there. So maybe, out of 10, 3 are Whirlpool brands in each region. Now, of course, 69,000 employees, 22 billion. And again, coming from engineering, for me, what matters is almost $1 billion my company spend in R&D annually. And again, 54 manufacturing location. Now, what does it mean? It means complexity. It means collaboration challenges, communication challenges, and again, a very competitive landscape, right? If you are such a large company and you are working in the global market segment, requirements of each industries are different, and so as the competition. So with that brings me to the next slide, please. Now, so when I talk about complexity, right, within product development, so I'm just trying to zoom in what it takes to launch a product or make a product, right? So when you look at, hey, somebody will get an idea, then somebody has to design it, and somebody has to manufacture, service, and all the different life cycle phase a product goes through. To me, if you look up, it's basically a systems of system. There are functions developed in all those specific areas, and they are developing and optimizing their own systems within that. And guess what? In order to make a product from starting to the end, all this different functions, or I would say systems, needs to work synchronizingly with others. So there is even more pressure to make it, highly synced and accurate on timely manner, right? So it's a complex process to launch and maintain and even dispose of any product. And today, and again, I have listed some of those which our company is focusing right now as a current focus area. But today I'm going to zoom in a little bit. The Tom was mentioning about DFX, right? So I'm going to focus a little bit on those. So that's the reason you see three icons, or I would say systems or functions, which are I highlighted in the red, which is verification, detailed designing, and sourcing. So we will be taking detailed look how it looks like and what we are trying to do in that. So next slide, please. Now, again, I'm just putting a scenario. We came up with an idea here. Let's design a best appliance or a washer possible. Okay. We got into our CAD systems and product tools, whatever we got, and we started making up. And then we do our own trade-offs, right? Hey, this is too big, this is too small. It won't fit in laundry room, or we need to have this kind of tablets. All those engineering requirement and service, manufacturing, all those functions requirement, we are trying to optimize our product definitions and make sure we meet those requirements, right? And guess what? One fine day, we will realize as our design process mature, hey, I think this is good enough. I need to get more people working for me. And then typically, now we need to manufacture it. Okay, we got this cool idea. It looks good, but can we manufacture it, right? Or can we even purchase this, right? So that's where the detailing, or I would say some information, which is a kind of we call as a handoff, needs to be done from one function to another. And let's say for tooling, right? So you detail a component or a CAD model, put all the annotations, what you are looking for, all the specifications or metadata, material properties and all, right? And then what we used to do, we used to share this with our tooler. And guess what? They are running their own optimization on their design, how we can manufacture in the best quality possible at the lowest cost time frame, right? So they are trying to optimize their own function, right? And guess what? When we used to do that, it's like, going to a doctor and saying, hey, I got a problem. I don't know what. And guess what? He wrote all the tests to you, and then you are going in 2 weeks to find out all those tests and a big bill. And then he will say, oh, you got a fever, right? So that's how we used to work in the past. So we will give him the transfer the data, right? And guess what? He's scanning, he's doing all those analysis, paralysis, and then he will come back. And if you are lucky, you will find your tooler which talks the same language. You need to be really lucky. Otherwise, you are mostly dealing with global supply base. So again, gathering the information, putting the information together, processing, then optimizing. It's a constant pursuit of perfection, which is happening between these functions, which we just talked about in systems of systems, right? So let's go to the next slide now, okay? Now, I think we all know it's competition. Our time to market is the key. And then our product life cycles are getting shorter and shorter. I mean, every year there is a new phone or something coming, right? The only way to keep your market share is not only quality product, but you also need to bring innovation to make sure people are understanding and we are improving life every day, right? I'm again connecting back to the vision, right? So the only way we thought, okay, the way we can do is if we can lean towards more of a concurrent engineering. So we keep our cross product or cross functions together as we develop. So can we reduce that handoff time from one function to another, right? And this is where we are trying to use DFMPro, which is, as Tom mentioned, is automating, defining what standard looks like. And then those standards, we compare each other. And then it also gives us analytics to understand how we are performing against those standards. And then second, it's faster and quicker for us. So though we don't need to worry, and everybody does mistake, right? But software maybe can quantify that better for us and stay inconsistent. So our quality of not only product, but also the content when we are giving handoff from one function to another is at least having going through a sanity check there. Okay, so overall, from our side, we are seeing a drastic change. If number of reloop you reduce from one function to another, quick, easy handoff from one function to another, that's what we are shooting for. And DFMPro is one of the tools which we are using right now. Next slide, please. Now, this is how our process looks like, a concept, okay, and then guess what? Before going to a tooler, we have a handy this tool which is given to the designer hands or engineer's hand. They can quickly verify and validate and verify, hey, am I within the protocol of standard rules and what we have already learned over the past, our process capability, are we in that or not? Rather than waiting for 2 weeks and then coming back and, you know, all those changes on the time comes on and then there's a cost associated with that. So this tool sits integrated with our designers. They have a full accessibility. Now, what we have done in this process that when you call for a formal DFM with a supplier, which is an outside or in-house sometime, but let's say any external function, you need to make sure that you are at least meeting the basic criteria. And if you are not meeting, you need to have a specific discussion. So kind of you are going with your own, let's say, records to a doctor. Hey, these are all my tests we have done in the past, and these are my parameters. What do you think? What could be a problem? So it's like, again, the medical record, right? Similarly, you have a record of all the manufacturing related or tooling related parameters, and then that you use with our toolers to understand, hey, is this something you can do or not? And again, maybe this is a lot of talk. Let me give you an example. So if you go to the next slide, please. So again, drafts. I'm sure if you are a designer or engineer, you might have missed the draft at least 1 out of 10 cases. And again, minimum wall thickness, undercut, and this all I'm referring injection molded components, because in appliance, that's what in refrigeration, that's our biggest bread and butter from a manufacturing capability side, right? So all these tools, if you imagine that somebody is verifying your entire model quickly without you have to go line by line and doing it, it's basically automation. And then if you go to the next slide, please. And if you set this kind of rule, this is the report comes out, right? And guess what? If you want to double click, you can double click of any of them and you will have exactly what rules are less important to Whirlpool or more important to Whirlpool, and what is the recommendation? Is it alert, ignored? And then if you have this kind of parameters, and if you go to the tooler now, hey, XYZ, maybe from Taiwan, let's say, right? This is the part which we are trying to procure, or we want you to make tooling for this much volume. And guess what? We ran our basic golden rules, which we have standardized over time. And these areas which still show, but these are critical to us. We want to maintain it. Can you work with your tooling, which is, again, optimization between functions, right? So that conversation is much more powerful and concurrent rather than, hey, this is a file, go and design the tooling. And he may put, I don't know what sort of complex tooling mechanism to make it work, but sometimes it may not be even relevant for us, right? So with that, I think what we are finding using this analytical methods or automation method, keeps us on the track, what we are doing, how we are doing, and it also feeds us back whenever we get a new capability or new fidelity or new rule increase, we can add on and start measuring against it. So just to sum up, overall from a future, this tool, as far as automation, it's part of our key roadmap and its key enabler, and we are already seeing a big benefit, at least from reloop and handoff perspective between functions. And next step, we want to really integrate this as part of our PLM system so that all the data record, the metadata is stored and it can be tracked, and we have a full line of sight of what we discussed, what is we are executing. And again, this tool can get better as much as we can make it, right? So we are trying to create a community which is basically built and maintain this tool's capability and keep growing on it. Which what I mean by that, maybe there is some rules which are not yet discovered. We need to discover those, right? And then if manufacturing processes are evolving, we need to adopt that and make sure this tool is capable of doing and capturing those too, right? And I mean, beyond DFMPro, as a Whirlpool, we are geared up to go towards model-based system engineering. And again, digital thread, bill of information, right? I think all of you kind of know about that. And again, totally another perspective, I would highly recommend all of you to pay attention. I mean, I would say, as an technology side, things are evolving very fast nowadays, right? And I would definitely recommend all of you to consider new technologies also as part of when you are designing your product development systems, I would say, virtual reality and simulation-based design. Okay? And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant, and thank you, Tom. Now we will hear it from Rahul. Rahul, over to you.
Thanks, Prashant. Thanks, Hemant. In the earlier part of this presentation, we heard Tom talk about digital transformation, the benefits it brings, and how DFX is important in the digital transformation journey. In the second part, we heard Prashant talk about how DFMPro is helping the digital transformation journey, what are the challenges it helps resolve, and how it accelerates the time to production or time to market by reducing the iterations. In the remainder part of this presentation, I'll be spending a few minutes on how HCL's DFX solution, which is DFMPro, makes this a reality, right? Tom talked about a few concepts, how DFX benefits, how it should be implemented. DFMPro will help an organization, help our customers implement these initiatives and improve the acceleration in the digital transformation process. Now, digital transformation is a big initiative. There are many facets touching all parts of the enterprise. DFMPro does not address all of them, but there are a few niche areas that we do help our customers with. And in that context, if you look at this slide, there are few process changes which organizations also have to make. For example, earlier organizations used to work with manual checklists. Now they have to move to CAD integrated automated checks, but they also need certain tools to assist them. Paper drawings have been replaced with model-based PMI, GD&T. Organizations are still on their journey. Not everything has been converted from drawings to completely model-based, but that journey is required to complete the digital transformation initiative. Similarly, transition from file repositories. Right? Earlier, you could live with paper documents, Word documents being stored in folders, but as you mature, as you grow along the digital transformation journey, you need to ensure that you are working with PLM systems and other databases supporting the digital thread initiative. Digital transformation is not a linear process. You need to ensure that you are agile, you are iterative, and moving continuously along and improving the process. So it is important to make measurements continuously, right? Earlier, if you were making manual analytical measurements, that was okay discretely, but now you need to ensure that the measurements are continuous. In this digital transformation journey, HCL's DFX solution, which is DFMPro, tightly integrates within the CAD environment. So as you can see in the top left of this picture, it fits into the CAD environment, thus helping a design engineer ensure that the designs which are created right the first time. It derives its knowledge from the downstream best practices, the manual checklists now converted into handbooks and now made live inside a software, which is DFMPro. You can validate the designs early, generate manufacturability reports. As we heard Prashant talk about, have early discussions with tooling engineers, manufacturing engineers, with suppliers to ensure that the design to manufacturing iterations are faster. and it fits nicely into the digital thread by leveraging the information which is part of this thread. For example, it links with CAD, it links with PLM, it can access organizational databases either through out-of-the-box tools or through customization APIs, and ensure that it forms part of the digital transformation initiative in your organization. There are a few key elements of DFMPro that I would like to highlight, which ensure that your digital transformation initiative will become successful. Starting first with the PMI rules, right? We talked earlier about how transitioning from drawings to model-based PMI and GD&T is important so that you can have information which is machine read. It's not dependent on any human to read that information. Once you start adding PMI and GD&T into CAD models, DFMPro will ensure that your review process is strengthened by validating the model along with the tolerance information, along with the PMI, GD&T information, such that your models can be easily manufacturable. So the information which you're transitioning from your paper drawings or 2D drawings into your 3D models is not going to go waste. It can be easily validated in the same way. Your validation process will improve, and your digital transformation is becoming faster. Similarly, integration with PLM. As I mentioned earlier, PLM along with other tools is a key portion of your digital thread, your digital transformation journey. So DFMPro tightly integrates within PLM with CAD to ensure that its results, reports, and any artifacts which are part of the DFMPro analysis are tightly linked with the CAD version, which is checked in into the PLM system, and you can have traceability back and forth. You can ensure that any point in time, the CAD version can be retrieved. You can relook at the DFX analysis, add your comments, add your feedbacks, and have communication with suppliers and downstream engineers in the organization. Lastly, we have the visual rule modeler on the right. So we talked about accelerating your manual checklist, transitioning from manual to automated checks. Now the visual rule modeler goes one step further by ensuring that the rules which are required to be built in software are not only left to the programmer, they don't need C++ expertise. Using the visual rule modeler, you can add rules to DFMPro just by using a wizard and a table-based interface, which you can see in some format here. It ensures that even your subject matter experts can contribute to the conversion of rules from manual checklists into something which is available in software and augment the standard C++ development effort. In the bottom left corner, you can see automated DFX analysis. So DFMPro not only integrates within the interactive CAD environment, but it also offers certain APIs, batch mode functionality as part of its server solution, which helps organizations plug it into various checkpoints in the enterprise workflow. So you can have the checks conducted in the design environment by a design engineer. You can submit it to the server for large assembly analysis. You can run it as a batch mode on a large set of parts or assemblies on a dedicated server, or you can use customization APIs to integrate in it with certain PLM workflows like check-in based on automatic analysis, check-in checks based on specific triggers, and so on. Lastly, we have DFX analytics, which ensures that your measurements related to your DFX deployment in the organization are no longer manual. With every DFX analysis, data which is generated is captured. You can understand how you're performing in the DFX journey as part of your digital transformation initiative. You can track designs and their performance across various parameters and ensure that your DFX initiative is also successful as part of your digital transformation journey. So that's all I had from the HCL DFX software perspective. Over to you, Hemant.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Prashant, and thank you, Rahul. To all attendees, I hope you enjoyed this session. As we heard the excellent industry point of view in terms of digital transformations and the role that design for manufacturing plays into it, we also heard directly real time from Prashant in terms of how Whirlpool is leveraging HCL DFMPro to accelerate product development as well as digital transformation. And later, Rahul spoke about the value proof and some of the new exciting feature that HCL DFMPro helps the global companies to achieve their and to accelerate their product development. We are now open for the question and answer session. Please feel free to ask your questions by typing in the Q&A window on the GoToWebinar navigation panel, and I'll take them one by one. All right. So let me access the GoToWebinar panel. Question answer. All right. So I think the first question is which CAD or PLM system do you use, and was it easy to implement DFMPro on your CAD system? I think this question is to you, Prashant. Which CAD and PLM system do you use, and was it easy to implement DFMPro on your CAD platform?
Yeah, so from Whirlpool standpoint, we are a PTC customer. So that's the system we got, which is Windchill and Creo. Those are our primary. And I think the second part of the question is difficult. Yeah, it's a journey. PLM is not something, as Tom was mentioning, all the companies, it's like fixing and applying the plane together, right? So yes, it's a journey, and we are still going through that whole idea, implementation, generation, and evolving. And it's not only, I would say, we are evolving as we speak. The new challenges, even the tools are evolving according to that. So it's always a balancing act, what tool can do and what we as a process we need.
Right. I think the question was more towards CAD platform, so I think it was integrated. Yeah, maybe. Great. Let me read out the next question. The next question is, I think, what are the top 3 reasons for the failure of a new product launch? Anyone can take it, or probably Tom. It is more
Yeah,
to a
it sounds like one for me. There's many different reasons. I think if you think in terms of a particular product, it usually comes down to requirements. Do you have good requirements for what you're trying to do? And then how well did you execute in solving those requirements? So I think in most cases, either you don't have all the requirements, you didn't get the requirements right, or if you did get them right, you had a poor execution. So that's, let's say, 2 reasons on the technology side. On the business side, there's lots of other reasons. We tend, at SimData, we tend to focus on requirements, but on the business side, you could have promotion, you could have the right requirements, but you went after the wrong market. The market was, you didn't either understand the market or it was too much of a reach for your business. And then how easy can you adapt when there's a great Mike Tyson quote, a famous US boxer, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. And when you execute a product launch, then reality hits, and you have to be ready to adapt to whatever came up. And what is your company's ability to adapt?
Right. Thanks, Tom. The next question came is, how does it help in sourcing? Please advise. So probably Prashant, you want to take? Does the DFMPro product help you in changing the way you deal with your suppliers or in the sourcing area as such?
Yeah, well, I'm still thinking through that. As far as sourcing is concerned, yes, it can help us. If, let's say, our base standard rules that, and I'm just making it up, okay, that we want to achieve the parts which we do in appliance, and we want maybe an accuracy of 0.2 or 0.3, right? So as far as supplier capability, those rules which we are setting can help us. Hey, is supplier capable of reaching this sharp, or the tooler is able to make this kind of thing and this size, right? So that way it can help to some extent. But then I think overall, since we are kind of 110-year-old company, I think we know what we are doing. So there's a whole ecosystem built already on this one.
Great. Thank you. And there is one more question for Prashant, I think, for you. The question is, how did the implementation of DFMPro with Creo go for you and the users? Was it easily adopted? Were the user easily adopted to it, or was there any pressure required to get it used by your design engineers?
Yeah, well, as far as engineering is concerned, I think as we all are passionate about changing things, but for others, right? So any change you drive in any organization, there is always, I would say, a mindset. Is it really good enough? You know, and it's a curiosity mind of an engineer. So all the people we work with, everybody was asking, is it good enough? But you have to go through that and make sure the tool, first of all, just giving a tool is not enough, right? You need to make sure they know when to apply, and it's supposed to deliver the function which we expect to deliver, right? So once you get those fundamentals right, yes, there was a process, people, the whole OCM has to be done together. Now for us, the good thing about it, since it's so integrated, at least one challenge was less for us because it directly integrates with our ecosystem very well. So that helps us a lot, at least to cross the first, step towards it because of its integration with our native packages which we use. But yes, we went through this, and again, I'm not saying that we are stable, but I think so far it's been 5 to 6 years now, and I think we are to a point where we are saying, yep, this is it. We want to keep growing this.
Right. And just to add that, just for the benefit of attendees, I think definitely from few of our customers also, what we observe that when the companies are making NPDI process and DFMPro as a part, or automation as a part of or design check reviews, I think it really helped them to really achieve the tangible benefit. So yeah, as Prashant says, I think it's a journey. You have to make it happen. The next question is, for all these manufacturing processes, is it one product, or does it each manufacturing process require a different extension or a part number? I think, Rahul, it may be for you, whether whatever the manufacturing processes that we are presenting on the screen, is it one product or does it require an extension?
Yeah, it's one product. All these processes are covered as part of the basic package. There are a few like composites, which may be special modules or additive, but most of the processes are covered in a single package.
Great. The subsequent question to that is, which all the other CAD platform does DFMPro DFMPro supports?
DFMPro has tight integration with Creo Parametric, SolidWorks, NX, and we also have a standalone version which can address other CAD platforms.
Okay. The next question is, what are the typical pitfall in the path of digital transformation? Maybe Tom, you want to take this?
Sure, and I'm sure Prashant also has some viewpoints from the real world.
Yep.
From our perspective, we try to deal with things strategically. And so getting a proper plan in place is critical. You've got to plan what you're going to do before you get started. Typically, we recommend incremental rollout. So come up with a big plan. For a true digital transformation, it's usually multi-year, but you've got to have regular incremental deliverables to keep momentum going in the program. Agile methodology is often used in these programs lately, and it seems to work well, where because of the complexity, it's hard to plan for everything and you need to adapt, and Agile gives you that flexibility to adapt. Finances are always a big deal. Trying to get any corporation of any size, trying to get a good budget in place to make sure you don't run out of money or overspend and lose momentum that way. And typically the problems, you heard Prashant mention organizational change. Getting a proper organizational change plan as a core part of your plan is critical. Getting people to change is really hard. The technology, you can generally, technology is very good today and also flexible. You can usually make it work, but getting people to adopt it is really can be very difficult.
Prashant, you want to add to this?
And again, just to add whatever Tom said, the requirements, commitment, all those things are required. And again, in my dream world, at least what I think, that go to shopping market and get everything what you want. In this world, it's not there. There are multiple use cases are there, so solutions are there, and then integration becomes even secondary or much more bigger challenge. And if those integrations are not seamless, right? When we talk about handoff between functions like SAP, ER, I mean, you name it, we have it. All this different system, right? So it becomes more of a journey. So don't think that you can just do it in quick shot, go to shopping market and get what you want and you are digitally transformed. Not going to happen. The reality is every unique solution has a unique, or every requirement has a unique solution. You need to pick and choose and do and be open for the trade-offs. There's nothing like a perfect solution for everything in one package. You go and there you go. You got Android or iOS and everything is done. No, on top of it, we install apps, right? So just keep that in mind. It's a systems of systems. That's what we are dealing with.
I agree. And recently, HCL, as HCL, we actually done some survey with our customers and partners. And one of the interesting finding from that survey is we asked that there are how many software applications, as Prashant was mentioning, right? Average design engineers really want to use it, right? Whenever he performs his duties. And the answer was clearly a 4, right? It means that there is software fatigue. There are a number of software designers or engineers need to really open and use it. And therefore, the point that Tom mentioned about CAD integrated applications, right, such as DFMPro, design for manufacturing, is actually minimizing that interactions. That design engineer doesn't need to open any new applications for that matter to really do the analysis. But thanks, Tom and Prashant. The next question is about cost analysis in DFMPro. I think Rahul, you can take it possibly. Do you do cost analysis in DFMPro? I think you mentioned in your slide about DFX for cost, right? Rahul? If you're speaking, you're on mute.
Yeah, we already have costing as part of DFMPro, but it's primarily oriented towards the design process, right? So the intent is to provide a order of magnitude cost for the design engineer to ensure that they can take the right decisions at that point in time. So with certain checks, you are correcting the design. Now you want to know, with these design changes, how am I impacting cost? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it too much? So that's where the costing module in DFMPro is very helpful.
Okay.
And I can add to that one, because cost is a horribly complex topic when you get into any enterprise. If you think back to the slide I showed about trying to pull things forward, if an engineer can get an assessment of let's say an accurate but not necessarily precise estimate of cost up front, it helps to get the decisions correct faster. What's the rough assembly cost of current parts, so that gives you a budget for what you can add for cost for the new parts that you need to create, for example.
Right. Thanks, Tom. We received one comment or question. I'm not sure, but I'll still take it. It says DFMPro can calculate the thinning value for sheet metal CAD part. I think if we can consider this as a question, Rahul, do you have any comment? Whether DFMPro can calculate?
How DFMPro works is based on global and organizational best practices. So for example, if you have a specific rule or best practice which tells you that, okay, if you have a bend radius which is smaller than this value, then it's going to cause thinning in a specific region, right? Or if you have a feature which is too thin in this area, if you have a wall thickness which is too less in this area, then it can cause manufacturing and also functional problems. So DFMPro can help address these conditions at the design stage based on the known rules, right, which are derived based on either simulation or learnings from the manufacturing. What DFMPro does not do is actual simulation, right? It's not going to calculate the thinning in a specific region based on the loading conditions, based on the force which is needed to deform the material. So that's not something which is in the scope of DFMPro. But if there is a known best practice or a rule for thinning, DFMPro does apply that, and we do have certain rules as part of the product today.
Great. Next question is how many standard rules are there in the DFMPro, or can I add a specific rule into the knowledge base? Rahul, maybe you can take this.
Yeah, across all the platforms now, we are nearing around 300 rules. And in addition to the OOTP rules, we also have APIs for customization, which allow you to add rules using C++. And I also talked about the visual rule modeler, which is our initiative to help reduce the expertise required to add new rules, right? So as we move along the digital transformation journey from manual checklist to software-driven rules, to help organizations make that transition faster, we are introducing the visual rule modeler, which will help you create and incorporate these rules without any programming expertise.
Okay. The next one is maybe this is for traditional engineering to concurrent engineering. So I think Prashant, you can take it. The question is how fast was the journey from traditional engineering to concurrent engineering? You might have answered it in a couple of other questions, but the question is.
I would say it's still on. Okay. We are trying to reduce and optimize that whole handoff between functions. And of course, these digital tools helps us to do so. But again, as I mentioned, integration is a journey. What is good for a time, it may be right now okay, but tomorrow it may not be, right? So it's an ongoing journey. We are getting better, we are seeing results, and I think we like it, and we will pursue further to see how much we can reduce it further.
Great. Thanks, Prashant. The next questions, maybe it is for Rahul. Rahul, I'll read it for you. It says how DFMPro checks and validates the rules, whether it runs automatically and warns via email that the rule has broken. Probably, I think the question is more about how does DFMPro works and how does the reporting happen to the user, right? If something is broken or something is not passed.
Yeah, so DFMPro, as I mentioned earlier, right, it's tightly integrated within the CAD environment. So idea is that as a design engineer is working on the design, as he progresses iteratively to the next phase of the design, he can quickly validate the current design as per the recommended best practices and get an immediate notification right there on the screen. So that before the design moves forward either to completion or to check-in and downstream to manufacturing, all the critical issues are addressed. There may be certain issues which cannot be resolved by the design engineer himself. It needs discussion, so those can be taken up. But the primary intent is to address the rules or the violations upfront and have the discussions as required, right? As Prashant mentioned, they use the checks or the violations to ensure that they can have fruitful discussions with suppliers and the tooling guys to ensure that the process is faster.
Great. Quickly, I think we are coming to the closure of this webinar, but quickly, couple of questions. The one is how DFMPro helps Whirlpool to reduce supplier iteration. Maybe this is Prashant for you. Does it help?
So I think maybe I will try to maybe specify this. So I think, as I mentioned, if you go to a doctor with your medical records, that, hey, all these parameters I measured myself, and guess what? My BP is high. I'm just letting. His ability to diagnose and go to that direction is much higher than just going, hey, I got a problem, right? So just notion of providing those characteristics, and guess what? In DFMPro, I don't know how many of you have seen. I would encourage you guys to just see. It is an interactive. It's in 3D space. So report out, you can quickly identify specifically which part of the component you have an error or you are not following the golden rules which you yourself has designed, right? So it becomes much more interactive to work with and share and collaborate. So as a collaboration itself, it solved the problem. We are faster than before, right?
I know. I think we'll take only last question. Thanks, Prashant. I think the question is about, can DFMPro analyze only part or component, or how large assembly file can also be analyzed by using DFMPro? Probably Prashant, Rahul, you can take it.
Yeah. So DFMPro works at the component level and for those manufacturing processes which you can see on the screen, and we keep on enhancing and improving the coverage. And it also addresses assembly level analysis. For recently, for large assembly analysis, we have also introduced a server component which will allow a design engineer to offload an analysis to a server so that he can continue with other designs. Right. So DFMPro does address component level as well as assembly level analysis.
Okay, great. I think we are at top of the hour. Thank you again, Tom, Prashant, Rahul, for answering those questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you all with us. So this concludes the webinar. Thank you all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. Again, if you wish to learn more about DFMPro, you can write to us or you can go to our website dfmpro.com and request for a demo, and somebody from HCL will definitely get in touch with you to give you the demonstrations of this particular product. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending and have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.